go into the future. I always get really excited about looking at the future because we talk about a lot of technology that's here, that's available, and a lot of that is relevant for the future, but let's paint that picture. I'm going to start with you, MB. Give me that vision.
I think we've seen it very much so in the last year, what we can expect for the future just from television shows, from videos, from YouTube, from anything online. I think it all pertains very much to our industry because that's what we're seeing. So right now we're talking about Industry 4.0 and automation and so forth and so on, but I think that's going to turn into AI and other technologies that we always thought were sort of way, way, way out there. And we're living it today. Mm-hmm. And I do believe that's what we're going to see much more quickly than we expected. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And do you agree with that? Is that the direction we're going? And essentially some people are talking about that lights out factory. Is that the end or...
the end? The end of what?
Not the end, I mean the end goal.
To many it seems to be, but I'm not sure that I would agree with that. Yeah. Because the driving force is the business. And the business at the moment, Industry 4.0, is what, 5 years old? So I'm sure they had a 5-year plan somewhere, which I don't think has been achieved because the number 5 comes up again. 5% of companies have actually adopted some form of Industry 4.0 practice after 5 years. So it's not going well. But the principles behind Industry 4.0 are sound. And that is that manufacturing has to support a much more volatile customer requirement. So changing quantities day by day, having a higher mix of products, lower volumes, lower quantities for batches. It's the kind of pain that we've been living with more and more for many years. So we know that trend is true. What we're going to see in a few years' time is the ultimate extent of that trend, where factories, EMS companies lead the industry in terms of change of technology. EMS companies, instead of leading the industry toward the east, is now going to lead the industry back. And they're going to make factories that are more local, that are making local products for a local audience for a vast number of OEM companies. They're going to have to be extremely flexible. The connection of the machines and the operators within that environment is going to be digital, which is a first step that we've taken with the Connected Factory Exchange. We are going to have algorithms based in software that are going to help humans manage those factories with the incredible complexity of the fast changeovers and alterations according to customer need. So the automation primarily is going to exist on the upper layer, the Industry 4.0 software layer that controls factories. That will drive in itself increased automation in robots, cobots, the use of AR and VR for operators, because operators will be a part of manufacturing, certainly for assembly, also for maintenance. Most of the things probably they will be automated as we go on. So factory of the future, very few people, lots of exciting things to do, a lot of automated machines, but basically it's like a black box manufacturer. Mm-hmm. You can ask the factory to produce anything you want, any day. There are 3D printers and all this kind of additive technology. That's all about the replacement of key component storage, just making them on demand. That is how I see the technology develop.
So if that's already the driving force of where we're going in the future, it also then has implications as to how equipment vendors, and you're a prime example of this, have to adapt or need to adapt from being a pure equipment vendor to maybe becoming something a lot more complex and solutions-based because of the complexity of an overall system where you're now involving data, involving AI, involving all those things. So how does the industry from the factory floor side of things need to adapt to the changes that are happening?
I think there's 2 key points here. One Michael made, which was even though you're collecting data, there's still a human interaction. There still has to be some final decisions that are made that are done by humans. So when you referenced earlier the lights out factory, I agree with Michael. I don't believe that will be the be-all to end-all, because I do believe there has to be certain very educated decisions made. Getting back to what you asked, is that if we are starting now to integrate, that's where just giving information is not enough. We have to make that information usable. We have to make it valuable. So if the ultimate goal is to get better and ultimately produce perfect product, and some of that extremely new product, we need to be able to take that information, make sense of it, and therein lies the next step, which is obviously Industry 4.0, but then taking that back down to the floor. So now I've collected it, I've sorted it, I analyzed it, I know what I need to do. Now we take it back to the floor and we start to implement it. And then we get to machine integration, and still ultimately there still has to be some finite decisions that are made within a factory, and that will entail some human interaction.
Okay. But with all that, it's quite interesting. When I look back, when I started in this industry, it was all about being faster, more precise, and the innovation came from the actual technology itself, from the equipment, within the equipment itself. Over the years, that has really shifted from, I think maybe because already we're maybe as fast as we can be, but the improvements are just minor because we're already so fast and so precise. But the innovation has come from beyond that, from that realm, that solutions realm, the data realm and things. Is that really now what is driving the innovation and the factory of the future?
It is certainly playing a strong part, but actually, the way the cleverness of software develops is not at a certain level, just a certain level within the factory. Looking at your software, for example, on flow ovens, you're adding another dimension from gaining an insight into not just reporting what happened, but saying this is what we need to do to make things better. This is a critical part because machine vendors are making very, very clever machines these days. But the degree of cleverness comes from the amount of data that they have access to. So, when you're having the access to data from just one type of machine, there's a limit on what you can do. But when you can qualify that against other data coming in from other sources, you can start to improve that level of optimization. So I believe that every machine vendor has a part to play to be a part of that smart, intelligent solution within its own realm, sharing information with its peers or up and down the line, and even in other parts of the factory. And the MES layer will kind of integrate those opportunities together. And then that goes up into some kind of master database, if you like. And who knows, we probably have an AI like IBM's Watson or something, looking at all of that data in infinite detail and being able to figure out, okay, this customer changed their order. What are we going to do? And within microseconds, you have a solution that actually is then fed back through MES, back down to machine vendors. They see what they need to do. They make the adjustments. And so it's everyone working together within that framework. So there are opportunities and parts to play and responsibilities for all. And we are really encouraging people to step up and start to work and collaborate to make these things a reality now that we've connected all of these machines together.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that Michael referenced was what product is coming in and to be able to plan. I think that's very, very key to some of these automation changes and some of the equipment-to-equipment conversations, and so much so to the MES systems. Because it isn't just the equipment, it's also the materials. So if you think about what Michael just said, okay, this new product is going to come in, I have to change over, I have to do this, this, and this. It also helps you plan for the future. So if you know what products are going to be built next month, what you have available today as far as components, if all that information is stored somewhere, you could actually start planning your purchasing and your stock and your timeliness for the changeover, not just for today, but for the month from now, so that you don't have any surprises and you know we can optimize, you can optimize, and all the different equipment can then work together. And now I can change over faster. I can produce the product exactly the way it was meant to be produced, and with very high quality standards. So I think it's just not even a short-term solution, it's a much longer-term solution as well.
Yeah. I fully agree, and actually when we're talking very much about our perspective, but ultimately we're satisfying the customer need of what they want to have built in much shorter time frames nowadays, from design right through to manufacturing, and we're optimizing those systems by having this network or technology around it. Michael, you mentioned right at the beginning there is a shift, geographical shift going on in the market as well, in the industry as well. So I do want to touch on that because it seems that's the future as well. So the location of where we're going to be to service the end user of the customers. So just to summarize, you said there was going to be a shift maybe from the east back to the west, or maybe an equilibrium throughout the world closer to the customer. Is that where you're going?
I was involved in discussions in one company whether they should move their manufacturing overseas to China, and the voting process, or at least the points of view, it wasn't like 90%, 10%. It was more like a Brexit kind of vote where it was 45, 55. It wasn't really clear, but they decided to do it anyway. And the real cost of manufacturing overseas cannot be underestimated. Apple made a claim that just 1% of the value that, the cost we pay for an iPhone, just 1% of that phone was spent on manufacturing. Okay, a lot more on materials, that's true, but 1% on manufacturing. So why are we worried about that 1%? Why not just manufacture it closer to the customer? Why not manufacture it here? Because when you ship that phone, by the time it reaches the market, with model cycles going like 3 months these days, the value of that phone is losing money all the time that it's en route from China to the UK. One mobile phone manufacturer has a factory right next to the airport in China, so that they go straight from the factory out on the runway, straight into a plane, and they're destroying the ozone layer or whatever it is. I mean, they're using fuel, they're wasting natural resources to get those phones to us quicker. Is this really the future that we want? Are we going to be able to allow this to continue in the future? The balance is tipping, and it's tipping rapidly. Nobody will notice that it's tipped, and it may already have tipped. But the EMS providers will realize that actually the investment of the money that we are throwing away, wasting, and destroying the planet, invest that money into local optimization, automation, a bit of software to control to make our factories more responsive with higher productivity. That is actually going to be the dominant business case. A few people have already seen it. We see manufacturing sites being built, new sites in the US and also in Europe, and they are being successful. But they are being successful with a new mindset. They are not just doing the same thing that other people have done.
MB, you're nodding, so I'm guessing you agree.
I do agree with most of everything that Michael said. One of the reasons I do believe that this change to Industry 4.0 and the factory of the future, as you mentioned, is that we have that ability now to be able to manufacture, not necessarily overseas, well, for me overseas is here, but to be able to manufacture outside of China and to do that very effectively. Right? Because if you can optimize and you can make the best of your processes and you can produce good product at probably a lesser price at this point now, with the prices having escalated so much in Asia, that we can do that. We can bring it back home. And I think that's going to be very important for the industry because we're going to be able to turn those products faster. We're going to see that innovation much faster now because we are, in fact, the places where these products were developed. Right? So now you can develop and you can get it to market. You don't have that long pause before we actually are starting to have it in our hands. And I think that change is going to happen, and I have seen it. I have seen it in the U.S. I'm not quite as familiar with the European market right now, but in the U.S. I have seen that happen, and successfully. Because people have, just what Michael said, is they've changed their mindset.
Yeah.
I want to do this, but I know in order to do this, I have to do it differently and I have to do it better. And so otherwise, I'm not going to be able to afford to make the change because it all comes down to money. We talk about optimization. One of the biggest terminologies that I hear that is a cause for problems is downtime, because downtime equates to money, right? So if I'm taking all of this information that I can gather and utilizing these new tools, AI in the future, to be able to make better decisions, my downtime is significantly less. Therefore, I'm more cost effective. Therefore, I can produce the product here.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to change the subject slightly because we can't have a discussion about the factory of the future without talking about the environment. Everybody's talking about the environment, the effects of people upon the environment. technology and what we're producing has a huge role to play in that. So when we're looking at the factory of the future, how much emphasis are we placing at the moment in ensuring the future of our planet, essentially, in our processes, on the way we work, in the way we locate our manufacturing, and how we produce the machinery that is essentially producing our products. I know it's a big, complicated subject, but it's one that is extremely relevant.
So you're asking currently, how much emphasis are we putting on it?
Are we putting any on it?
And I don't see that.
Okay.
I see very little emphasis on that. And I think because that's a whole nother area where someone has to devote time and do analysis and make some adjustments to the plant and how things are done. And that's going to take time, money, and someone to significantly focus on that. And I have not seen that shift too much lately, because even just changing to more automation has taken so much time and rationalization. You have to do an ROI on it, right? So I have to do the same thing if I'm going to make a shift to being more environmentally friendly. And until someone sort of shakes you enough and says, okay, it's time to get your act together here and move on this, people will procrastinate, just as typical. I don't really want to spend money unless I'm forced into it. And so unless you have someone that's really going to grab hold of that and say, yes, this is my decision, I'm going to investigate it and I'm going to make a change, I think it will take significantly longer.
For us as a software company, like any software company, we are kind of responsible for looking for future solutions before people are forced into difficult situations. So 2 examples kind of spring to mind. The first is energy consumption. So there have been events in the world that have restricted energy supply to key manufacturing areas. People have installed sensors to sense when energy is consumed, building up an energy profile of how much energy does it take to complete a particular product. So then when energy is expensive, you make the products that require less energy. And so that's one kind of approach. Or maybe when the wind is blowing or the sun is out, you can make more, high energy products, if you like. And a number of companies are providing those kind of sensors. We built that into the CFX specification. So that is something which is ongoing. Secondly is the analysis of waste, which every manufacturer is focused on. Waste can also be the failure of products in the market, products not fulfilling their life cycle. And so what we see some companies do is to take in products that have failed within the market and do the servicing themselves, or at least connect the servicing to the manufacturing, so that they can ensure that product life is not wasted due to defects. One could extend that to say, why not do the recycling at the factory as well? Because one of the biggest costs of factories is materials. Mm-hmm. Where do materials come from? A greater proportion is coming from recycling. So why not recycle where you use? You avoid all the transportation. Mm-hmm. It's 2 different industries right now. Why not make partnerships? Why not start to collaborate to be able to have that cyclical activity going on a local level? Mm-hmm. Who knows? I would like to see it.
Something that is in the making, on the radar of people, and something maybe that will develop over time. Now, again, we've run out of our time here on the panel. It was really interesting talking to you. Thank you very much, MB, for your contribution.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so
Michael,
much.
Thank you to the audience as well. Remember, this video will be on the What's in Electronics TV YouTube channel, and MB and Michael will be here after this talk now for any questions you may have as well. So thank you very much once again, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you.